Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia. With me, as always, my best friend, the Welsh, and you hanging out here on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB so you don't miss any of the content we've got going on all draft season, all in season. Leading off is going to be back in just a couple weeks, if you can believe it. Pitchers and catchers are arriving to spring training. We are getting started here, and it's time to look at some guys that are undervalued on the hitting side. Now, just as a precursor to the show, this doesn't mean they're sleepers. These are guys that you've had on your teams. You already know they are going outside the top 100 currently as of recording this, though. And it's guys that we think might be just a little bit undervalued based upon the consensus ADP, which, by the way, you can find over at FantasyPros.com right now. So go do that. Also, while you're at it, make sure you're checking out Draft Wizard, because Draft Wizard has the expert rankings, and they are ready to go right now for download, where you can start working your draft simulations, start practicing to draft strategies, start practicing with what teams look like, get your different rosters. If you don't like a pick, you can go ahead and undo a pick. You can use the pick predictor. You can make your own cheat sheets. We'll talk about that later too. And of course, it's basically the cheat code for all of your drafts, because when you sync Draft Wizard to your leagues, you have the ability to then go ahead and get all the bells and whistles, all the recommendations, all the expert rankings, and all of the insights and strategies right there in one spot, directly linked to your drafts. So practice the draft simulations, practice drafts with friends, and then sync your leagues. That way you make sure you're using Draft Wizard for your actual drafts as well. You can download it wherever you get your apps. Right now, we're going to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. All right, let's talk about some underrated hitters right now, Welsh. And the first one is a guy that a lot of us had expectations for last year. And I feel like this happens a lot, right? We get our expectations up. We get very excited about a player. And then injuries or issues or underperformance kind of all of a sudden stymie that excitement. Well, Triston Casas of the Boston Red Sox, there's still a lot to get excited about. This Boston Red Sox team is on the verge of a rebirth here with some of these prospects they've got coming through the organization last year. And this year we expect more. And it seems like things are finally on the upswing in Boston. When you watch Casas, he is a big guy, power hitting, slugging, old school kind of first baseman. There's a lot to like here when it comes to Casas. Currently, he's going around player 101 in the consensus ADP. 13 homers last year in just 63 games. Again, that's the problem, just 63 games. So I think we expect some bumps here and there from Triston Casas in 2025. But the power and also the top heaviness of the position at first base, to me, makes him a really intriguing player in 2025.
Yeah, and he is, I will say, he is sandwiched in kind of an area where there's a couple really good players. But the problem with that is having a few of those players usually pushes somebody out. And it's kind of been Triston Casas, who in many years past has been somebody that everyone jumps in on. But, you know, as you mentioned, in a short period of time last year, it was still fine. Like, he missed a bunch of time with injury, and then his return, it was okay for most people. But when you look on the underlying, you still see, you know, some elite pieces that are being put together. 13% barrel rate last year with a 45% hard hit rate. Those two, especially the barrel rate, really elite stuff with a big fast bat. You're talking about he's just this like big dude. Well, he registered well above in the top like 15 to 20 percentile of the league in bat speed. And this is for like a 6'5", almost 250 pound first base. Yeah, huge first baseman. It was almost around 75 miles per hour on the fast track swing, which is well above. He just barrels the ball, generates, you know, such incredible force to it that he's a 30 home run threat really at all times. Problem was the batted ball like quality kind of dissipated last year. 31% strikeout rate, which was a over 6% increase from the year before. And his expected batting average from his 240 actual, his expected was under 220. So like those are the worries, and that's what's suppressing some of the value. But you know, you come back to it and you see a healthy Casas. You see a healthy lineup, by the way, of Devers and Jarren Duran has taken that next step. And you see RBI opportunities through the roof. Projections are in a really interesting spot too. I'll just pull up all the big dogs are out there now.
I see the ATC ones right now. 27 homers, 74 runs, 79 RBI for him. I think it's a pretty strong baseline, especially when you consider he's hitting third in this lineup projected. That's to me what's so appealing too, is that lineup projectability in the third spot. There's a lot of runs, a lot of RBI, all those counting stats that you're looking for in fantasy.
Well, what is the batting average on ATC? Because I've got the bat up from Derek Carty, so those are too good to bounce off of each other.
The ATC batting average has him at 242, which is all right. If he can somehow get up to 250, 255 or something like that, I would dance a jig. I'd be very excited about it.
Well, see, and that's a great point. So on the bat, looking at Casas, it's excuse me, also 242, 27 homers, 84 RBI in around 143 games. So the suppression is some of that batted ball quality. It's like the strikeouts were there, the XBA wasn't there, but barrel, hard hit, great big fast bat speed, and hopefully health is the thing that's going to push him into like a much, much better direction. And he's one of those guys, even from last year, he hit better against lefties as a lefty, struggled against righties. I think there's a lot of things that are working in his favor. He also did, they are small sample sizes, but in a first half registration of the end of the year, he was better. He was hitting 242. So if he's a 240 hitter, 30 homers are in tow. But if he bounces back up, and this is what makes him truly underrated, if he's closer to, let's say the year before as a 260 hitter, legitimately might be a 30 plus homer. So back to the first thing I said was he is sandwiched in this range where you do have the Cody Bellingers of the world. You've got Christian Walker, who I really like. But when he pushes outside the top 100, I do think he is one of those guys that, whether it's first or even corner, if you want to build a little bit of a stockpile on that big power corner infield, he is a value. I think he's a good choice to put on the undervalued conversation, because there's a lot of other people that we're talking ourselves into, and it really isn't Casas at first base right now.
Well, the next guy we're going to talk about, I have him higher in my overall ranks than I do Casas, and another player too that we had high expectations for. He was a darling of mine last year. Injuries really just kind of derailed him. He did get up there for 43 games with the Rays, but unfortunately fell a little short. It's Junior Caminero coming in at 105 overall in the current consensus ADP at FantasyPros. This guy is only 21 years old this year. So let us pump the brakes and let us just step back for a moment and take a breath, because when you go back and you look at the minor league track record of Junior Caminero, 307, 374, 548 slash with a 921 OPS in 282 minor league games as a child, basically. Okay. He is turning 21. And I think this is the value. This is the buyback in, and another position here in the corners where you're looking for more help. You're looking for a guy who's got huge upside, and I think is just a better pure hitter than Casas. Casas might have a little bit more power this year ready to go. I understand that. I get that. But if we're talking about total package overall of hit tool, it's Junior Caminero. And I'm also super excited to see what he looks like getting out of that Rays ballpark, because now that they're going to be playing in that Tampa situation there, I imagine some of that humidity is going to make that ball fly a little bit more. Sure, there's going to be some weird rain delays and some issues and some other stuff they're not used to dealing with. I can't imagine what that's going to be like in Tampa and Florida, where it goes, like every couple hours, it's going to rain at some point in time. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see, because historically speaking, that has not been the greatest ballpark for hitters. The batter's eye has been a problem. So hopefully this opportunity, now that they are outside of that venue, could even push Caminero up further than our expectations.
So I think on the surface, this is like fantastic name. I think the only thing that pops up is there might be an argument to like, is he really going to be undervalued? Because there is a camp of people that have been involved in drafts and whatnot, for over the last month or two that would probably argue the phonetics of it. Like, well, are you sure undervalued? I'm not undervalued, because people are seeing him go, in some instances, inside the top 50 in some NFBC drafts. Yet the ADP across the board, still in an early state, really hasn't caught up with Junior Caminero. Because, as we're pointing out, the consensus ADP on FantasyPros, taking multiple sites, is outside the top 100. So by that virtue, it is. I do think this is one of the dicey ones. Again, we're not calling him a sleeper or anything like that.
No,
or
just undervalued for the player. He is 94 right now on FantasyPros, by the way, in NFBC on the consensus there.
Okay, yeah, so he's even moved up a little bit more. So I just give that caveat to people, but in like a total sense, Junior Caminero is a prime example of this. It's just, we know that young rookies are going to boost up. He also is just coming off of playing in the Dominican Winter League, where like they won a championship. He's getting interviewed. He got interviewed yesterday about how, like, what was it? I think it was like Foul Territory was interviewing Caminero and his agent, saying like, do you think you alone just created this opportunity where Pujols wants to now be a manager because he was managing the team, and Caminero had this monster homer. He was phenomenal there. So he's got a lot of buzz that's going on, and it's warranted. He hit 276 in the minors last year. He had his stint in the majors, which, didn't blow any doors off, but he almost hit right around 250. He had an expected batting average in that general area. And then I talk a lot about that, like just, the underlying metrics, 11%, almost 12% barrel, 45% hard hit rate. Those two things are phenomenal, while also striking out a pretty low amount. He's going to get the ball in the air a little bit more. Caminero if he was like prospect eligible, he would be your AL favorite rookie of the year, I think, right now. I don't even think that would be a question. Projections are a little torn on him. I believe, I don't have ATC up. I believe ATC is very aggressive on some of the offensive projection sides. The bat is a little bit suppressed. They've got him at 264, 22 homers, 5 stolen bases, around 130 games. I want to say there's a projection system or two that's got him closer into the 30s, but he has just a really
is at 29. I think that's the one you're thinking of.
Okay,
right,
what is
I'm
ATC?
Looking at him on Fangraphs. ATC has him at 22. So ATC is actually a little bit more on the conservative side for him.
Yeah,
but
they're on with the bat.
Again, I think sometimes with those younger players, the ATC tends to be a little bit more like that.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd just say is, like, throughout the minors, he has been a guy that does not have big strikeout problems, makes a lot of contact. This is another one of those just like big, fast bats. He registered one of the fastest overall bat speeds in baseball. It didn't register last year. So like, you go and take that with that pure raw power, 30 home run potential at a corner infield spot when it's going around 100. And also sky's the limit with a young player. Yeah, he is undervalued. I do think, looking into the future, March type of things, if people are watching this after, he might not be so much anymore. But we're telling you right now he is, and it's going to jump.
Yeah, I do believe that. But look, this is if you're doing best balls, early drafts, things like that, take advantage, right? Because still people want to see what it looks like. And I think there's a little also question mark about, okay, how does the ballpark play? We know what it looks like in spring, but we don't know what it looks like in June, July, August. We don't. So it could be fascinating, just like we don't know with Oakland too, necessarily, when you put major league players into that kind of environment, what it exactly looks like in Sacramento. Let's get to another guy who is a perennial 2020 guy. 4 straight years of 2020, yet he's going outside the top 100. And I understand the concerns because, that study that came out about the Mariners ballpark, you start diving in and saying, oh, maybe the Mariners ballpark, between the humidity issues / the weather concerns there at times, the batter's eye there, people are saying, oh, maybe this Mariners ballpark is just really tough to hit in, and that's why Julio's struggling. Or they really just didn't have a lot of liner protection, and they haven't had a lot of great hitting, period, in the last couple of years. And that could also be why some of these numbers are extremely down. It does feel a little chicken and egg, but Randy Arozarena, regardless, is still a 2020 guy. And I think when you look at the Savant page, he's still above average in exit velocity, above average in hard hit rate, above average in walk rate by a country mile. I know it was a down year for him. I get that. The BABIP was to 275. That's the lowest he's ever had. He's never had a BABIP in his career, by the way, under 300. So I'm looking for a bounce back from Arozarena regardless. And I think this is a perfect time to buy on a guy where you know what the baseline is, Welsh, but at the same time, if he could just kind of get that batting average back to at least respectability, Arozarena is absolutely going to crush this return on investment.
Yeah, I think he borderlines. Like, I think he has the potential to be a massively undervalued player. Mm-hmm. Is he quite in the like screaming undervalued? I'm not 100% sure yet, but to your point, he's had 3 straight 2020 seasons. He did it last year with just a really, really bad average. And things got worse essentially when you go to Seattle. Seattle's worst ballpark factor in all of baseball. And when you talk about the jump from 4 to 5 or 2 to 1, 2 to 1 has the same difference of 30 to 29 right now, which is crazy. And so, the number one ballpark to the worst, Seattle is bar none the worst, kind of across the board. So that's not good necessarily long-term for Arozarena's offensive upside, but you see still in his game that one massive thing kind of carried him down and pushed him down and struggled with his expected batting average was fastballs. He hit like 172 against four-seam fastballs last year. That's a little bit of an anomaly. Something I've done a lot of looking on is when you see extreme struggles or just domination against four seam fastballs, that usually doesn't carry over. A guy that hits like 350 against four seams all year, that's going to regress. But also guys that hit like 170, 160, that's also going to positively regress. The year before, he had hit 254 against four seam fastballs. He hit 172 this past year. So you're locked in. You got a little bit of a better lineup. Maybe your home run power isn't going to quite be there. I'm hoping he sells out for a little bit more average, because he did have a depreciation in his barrel and his hard hit, but he walked a little bit more. He's going to be at the top of the lineup, and he's a 2020 guy. So Randy Arozarena, I'm in. I do think he floats in the undervalued, but it's kind of a little bit yet to be seen of what this batted profile we saw last year in Seattle is going to look like. We just need some major changes, but maybe that's going to pop with, playing with guys like Victor Robles at the top and playing with Julio Rodriguez. So for 2020, like lock 2020 guys that you get outside the top 100, he is that. So by virtue of getting 2020, Randy Arozarena is undervalued.
I 100% agree. And look, even if it repeats what he did last year and that's what it looks like, it's still pretty good for what you're getting outside the top 100. So I'll take that. And I'm hoping and looking to a bounce back. I'm hoping that's the anomaly, because it's not like he is an old player by any stretch of the means or something like that, right? He's 29. He's in his prime, actually. These should be his best seasons coming up. Next guy on our list, coming in at 126, Washington Nationals second baseman Luis Garcia, who is starting to become, I don't know, this year's Jarren Duran for me. Like last year, there's that player that we talked
about. Favorite player.
He is. I think he is. Well, I mean, what's not to like here? I mean, we're talking about a guy who is, entering his age 25 season, right? He always had good contact skills in the minor leagues, 285 batting average there. Now, I'd like to see the OBP be a little higher, but he's got good speed, right? So 22 bases last year, 18 homers. I just can't wrap my mind around a situation where, when people are drafting Jose Altuve to try to hope for, let's say we had 2020 and 280. Well, okay, that sounds great, but that also sounds like basically the season Garcia gave me last year, 100 picks later, literally 100 picks later. And I don't get it. So, and you're talking about a younger player, you're talking about a young team that really is starting, I think, to emerge this year. And of course, young teams will have peaks and valleys. But Welsh, right now, this player is at 126. Second base is rough. It's rough out there in the second base streets, I think. So yeah, that's the guy that I keep coming back to and keep landing on, because I would like to see him move up in the lineup potentially a little bit. I know there's some questions of where he might hit this year, but what you saw last year to me, I don't think was a fluke when you look at the minor league track record. A guy who makes good contact, got batting average, got speed. He's got all that you're looking for. And I think, once again, you're talking about 2020 players like Arozarena. Well, here's a 2020 guy in the infield. That's a nice thing to have post 100.
Yeah, and this is another one of those guys. This video is also going to serve as like a time capsule of players that are going to rise in value. We're going to talk about that throughout the year of like, who are players that have been on the rise and experts are drafting. Everybody loves Luis Garcia because of the 2020 potential. And the wildest thing too is, I saw him years ago in the Arizona Fall League, and this was at the height of him being this very slap hittery guy. He had a swing that just came across his body, had no launch angle whatsoever. Yet I remember I was in some sessions of BP, and he was crushing stuff in the Surprise Stadium over on the Pole side, or actually it was in Peoria. It's very impressive what the power was. And then he did make the change. It's one of those things we look at those high contacty type of guy, the Luis Arises, maybe the Jacob Wilsons, and we go, man, if they just had this concerted effort to get the ball in the air, that maybe they could do something. He did that. He changed his profile. He upped his barrel rate to 8%. His launch angle almost doubled from last year. His hard hit was over 40%. By the way, strikes out 16% of the time. And he just decided, I'm now going to be a runner. So it's quality contact kind of across the board. He doesn't have a pitch type he struggles against. He's learning to get the ball in the air. I have like a preconceived, this is who Luis Garcia was when I watched him in the minors. And again, it was that guy that, I just let the ball travel. I'm going to hit across my body opposite field, and that would suppress power. But so that's kind of in my brain, but he's turned it around into being, no, I'm more of an impact hitter. 86% zone contact rate with that barrel and that hard hit. If he progresses a little bit, he legit could be a 2025 guy. I do not believe he will, but when you're floating around 2020 and you have a good batting average, that is the big key for me. Give me these guys this year that are going to have solid batting averages. He hit 282 with a 278 expected batting average and those numbers. We just talked about Randy Arozarena in 2020. Well, guess what? He doesn't come with a good batting average. Luis Garcia, in some instances like this, has an ADP that's lower than him. Luis Garcia goes 2020 with a great batting average, and that is extra valuable this year more than ever.
Yeah, and look, you look at the Savant page, a lot of red. We'd like to see him walk a little bit more, sure, but that's just never been the guy he is. He's just more of a swing and make contact kind of guy. And again, the guys who put the ball in play have a chance to be on base. And when you have a chance to be on base, you have a chance to score runs. You see, that's how baseball works, kids. And I feel like people forget that. You go back to the age of the Tony Gwynns of the world and those guys who just didn't strike out, put the ball in play. Good things happen. That's how you win batting titles. I'm not saying Garcia's going to win a batting title. I'm just saying it's a lost art form, and I'm here for it. Also, everybody who knows and is watching the shows the last couple of years knows that I am not a guy that likes to chase catcher. But I also think that there's some value here with certain catchers at certain moments. And Logan O'Hoppe, to me, is another guy at 145 currently that I don't think we've seen the best version of yet. And the Angels are kind of a weird, funky team where there's a lot more that I like now on the Angels than I have in a very long time. And I know that sounds bizarre because we've had Trout, we've had Ohtani, but the Trout situation every year with the price you had to pay and the injuries was always difficult. You look at the rest of this lineup, they brought in Soler. Chanel is an interesting player. Neto's an interesting player. Rengifo certainly has some talent too. Health is going to be crucial for this roster, but there's value here on it too. And Logan O'Hoppe, if you look at some of those projections right now, he is absolutely a 20 home run catcher. I think there's a world, you look at the 318 BABIP last year. Okay. You look at the ISO was a little low last year, but I feel like the stop start of, sometimes with the injuries that he's had, it was good. He had 136 games last year, had 500 plate appearances. I think that's what he needed to get under his belt. And now I feel like he's in a position, Welsh, where he's finally ready to take another step forward. I think that 22 home runs could easily become 28 or 29 this year. That's what I think is possible for him, especially if a guy like Trout stays healthy in the lineup and there's a lot more going on offensively there. What do you think of O'Hoppe? Because I know it's funny that I was like, yeah, let's put this catcher on the list, me of all people. And then, of course, there's you shooting it down. So what's the downside of O'Hoppe here? And is it just a matter of when you are comfortable taking catchers?
So O'Hoppe, the biggest negative is he's a catcher. So that would be like the biggest thing for me is just he has that catcher position. I'm always looking for the latest catcher possible or getting a massive value on a specific target. So Will Smith falling, O'Hoppe if he fell really far. Wilson Contreras would be one this year. But if we look at like the actual profile of a guy like O'Hoppe, first off, he checks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for. Under 500 at bats, he hit over 20 homers. Great barrel rate, great hard hit. Like that's all there. Gets the launch angle sweet spot over 42%. Gets the ball in the freaking air. Like you love that stuff. What you don't like is bad strikeout rate. And he had a decrease in his own contact percentage. And then they bring in Travis d'Arnaud. That's the other thing. Why? Like if this is your guy, let's play him every single day as much as possible. Don't know what that is going to be yet. Maybe it's going to be more DH than anything else, but I would say inside the top 150, it's still really not my area for a catcher. Mm-hmm. I do think he's got the potential to up on that power department, probably not be the top guy. That's Cal Raleigh or Shea Langoliers. So I guess I push back overall that finding undervalued catchers doesn't exactly exist, especially if it's 150, but O'Hoppe could push back a little bit more. And if he has a positive regression in the strikeouts, that comes down and he gets back to getting in the zone a little bit more, he has the potential to be a 25 plus home run hitter for sure. So I don't see him in the valued range, but I think it was important to talk about it because you love him. You love this as a catcher. You love some Logan O'Hoppe.
I do. I do. And I think there's value with the Angels this year. Again, something I did not think that I was going to have on my bingo card for 2025. I was looking ahead, actually, or should I say looking backwards at last year's show before we look ahead to more guys. And some of the names on last year's undervalued player list, Willy Adames, we had Bailey Ober on there, Teoscar Hernandez, Joe Ryan. That's a pretty good list there.
That's pretty
decent.
We had
some pretty good guys on this list.
Yeah, I probably had a couple duds, I guess, in there, but I'll take
duds
those.
In there. I mean, I don't think Nick Pivetta was a dud. I wouldn't say he's a dud. Xander Bogaerts was a dud.
That was a dud.
But I think the thought process was good there. The process was good. The productivity was not good. Candelario, I was one of your guys. I feel like Candelario was a Welsh guy last year.
Come on, guy. Come on, guy. Come on.
Oh, and also on this list, It's definitely one of my guys. Shota Imanaga, definitely on that list. So actually pretty good. I would say 9 out of the 13 that we
Joe,
did
you're like,
last
here's
year.
all
We're only
my
gonna do
great
10.
ones. Welsh, by the way, you like Jamer Candelario, you dumb idiot.
All right, next guy on the list. This is a Welsh guy. I'm saying it right now. I don't like it. He was not on my OG list. I woke up this morning and all of a sudden Paul Goldschmidt is in my cereal. Get out of my cereal, Paul Goldschmidt. 155. Look, Welsh, I think the mindset that you're taking, let's see if I'm correct, is the Yankee ballpark cures all ills. And maybe it does for some guys. But this is a guy in decline for 3 straight years. He is 37 years old. I know there's still some red on that Savant page in terms of hard hit rate and barrel rate, and that gets you excited. And I get that. And certainly the Yankees are going to be a much better offense than St. Louis was last year. But I just keep seeing a player in decline who was once great. And into your late 30s, I just don't know if a complete rebound rebirth is in the cards for him. I get it. It's cheaper. It's undervalued. So I guess I'll give you undervalued on it. But man, I have a tough time getting excited to draft him. I feel like Alec Boehm is around the same place, and I think I would rather just take him or another guy we're going to talk about on this list coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, that guy maybe, but not Boehm. Absolutely not Boehm. Yeah, this is like clearly about, it's a phenomenal ballpark to go. The ballpark factor is weighted a bit, obviously, by Judge, but it's like number 3, I think, in all of baseball in right-handed home run factor. Again, Judge kind of weights that a little bit. But from an overall perspective, you love the offense, you love the ballpark. Goldie, even in his age, like he has declined. He's not that same player anymore. We didn't see, some big uptick in stolen bases. His average is kind of depressed a little bit, but like you said, it's still 10% barrel. Hard hit was around 50%, which we loved to see last year. Mm-hmm. He's still hitting the ball on average, 91.2 average exit velocity. So he's still putting quality contact in there. He's just, again, depressing a little bit. Like he can around 240, 250 against fastball and breaking pitches. So I'll take that in that ballpark with the potential run support. I just think it works really well. And what you said before, it's undervalued. Like that's all that this is. He's going outside the top 150 for a first baseman with that pedigree, with that profile, because this didn't work out for Anthony Rizzo. I would 100% agree with that. It's not going to just work out for anybody, but I think this puts him in a really good spot where he is super cheap. And this is one of those guys that he doesn't even have to be a first baseman. He can be a corner infielder. I think there's a legitimate 90 RBI opportunity with 25-ish homers. And if he's 25-10, and he's like even 80-80, that's well worth a 150
that would be
pick. And that's why he's undervalued.
I don't like Alec Boehm. Let me just put that out there.
You sound like you do.
I don't. I like him more than Goldschmidt. Look, Alec Boehm, you can say what you want. He's a guy's going to hit 280 every year and driving 90 plus runs. And he's done it 2 years in a row, 97 runs driven in 2 years in a row. Goldschmidt's not sniffing that number the last couple of years. So, I mean, I know you got to have guys get on base. I get that in front of you. Hopefully the Yankees can fix that for him, but I'm just not sold. I am sold, however, on the next guy at 164, Jurickson Profar, who last year really kind of changed his profile in a lot of ways, and I love the landing spot with the Atlanta Braves. I mean, this is why the Braves are the Braves, and I hate it as a Mets fan, but I saw that signing, and I literally just threw my hands up and went, well, that's quintessential Atlanta Braves. You let the market kind of come to you, you find a terrific value, and you crush life. And Profar, last year playing for San Diego, had a great season, scored 94 runs, hit 24 homers, 85 RBIs, stole 10 bases for good measure at 279. It was all there. It was a career year, the best we've seen from him. And it's funny, he's been around forever, Welsh, but he's only 31 years old. So I don't think he is past the prime. I think he's still kind of in it. Do I expect a complete repeat? I got to be honest with you, I do. And I think that this is a tremendous value for a guy that not only can give you some power and average, but also is going to give you some runs scored depending on where they hit him in the lineup. And I think there's going to be some opportunity for him to move up in that lineup too if he stays hot. A little stolen bases too, a little of everything. And I don't know, man. I think at this point, I'm just in on Jurickson Profar, especially at this value. Where are you at with it?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, you were talking about the batted profile, which I'm always I always go to, but they were career highs across the board. Barrel, hard hit was career highs, close to career high in K percentage and a walk percentage, career high expected batting average. His expected batting average was better than his actual batting average, which is really incredible for him. Great 87% zone contact rate. This profile just feels so good. And then guess what? Hitting both righties and lefties well. And you're getting out of one of the worst ballpark factors in general. And you're going to Atlanta, where, by the way, he hit like 297 at home
Mhm.
past year in San Diego with 15 of his homers. So now you're going to go into a better environment in Atlanta, tons of run support, a team that loves to run as well.
Yeah.
I love this move for Profar. I think he is the, I'll tell you this, when you put this list together and then I made some adjustments to some of them, this was the one. Well, there's one other guy, this guy, and then a shortstop we're going to talk about in a little bit. They were exactly what I thought about when we were thinking about
Mhm.
undervalued hitters. And they were the quintessential players. I think Profar is that. He might, like you said, hit a little bit lower in the lineup, but I legitimately think we are in the 2010 baseline area for his stats, and maybe the average ticks up a little bit. I really do love this signing. And I love this pick here.
380 OBP last year. And if you look at the whiff percentage, the walk percentage, all that stuff, it is bright red. I mean, we're talking to the
Yeah.
90th percentile there everywhere. If he maintains that level, Welsh, he is not going to be hitting in the bottom of that lineup all year. I'm telling you right now.
Well,
He's going to move up towards the top,
I'll
especially
say,
to start the year, because Acuna is not going to be at the top of that lineup
yes,
probably in the opening. And if Profar's up there and they have success with that, they might step back and go, let's leave Profar somewhere near the top. We could drop a Michael Harris down. We could drop somebody else down. Don't be shocked if that happens
that
come May.
that point is actually key, because what I was going to say was the Braves are not afraid to make those moves. They've moved Albies up and down the lineup.
Mhm.
They've moved Harris up and down the lineup. I mean, Profar is built to be like a number 2 hitter. Don't be shocked if he was a number 2 hitter. And I mean, Michael Harris would be great for that spot as well, or Albies. But I just wouldn't be shocked if Profar, they wanted to throw him into that spot. So I really like this pick.
Okay, a couple more guys left to talk about. 175, Masyn Winn of the St. Louis Cardinals at shortstop. This is a guy that Welsh and I both like quite a bit. Last year, you start to get a taste how good he was. Just 22 years old, 15 homers, 11 steals, hit 268. He played 150 games, so it was a really strong full season for him, his first full season in the big leagues. A player, again, who's got so much ahead of him. So this one puzzles me of why he is so low here because of the profile. I don't know if people are just expecting the Cardinals to be bad, which, okay, that's fair. But there's also a world where Arenado bounces back and Jordan Walker, who is still much younger than people realize, maybe starts to turn things around. And all of a sudden, maybe the Cardinals offense isn't quite as bad as people might project it to be. What do you think about Masyn Winn?
Yeah, I think the reason that he's still down is like in that entire season last year, it was still 15-11. So like as much as like some of the profile is fun, he didn't put up this big counting stat season. He's been working all off season, building more body mass. I mean, you always want to hear like, were they a drive line? That's where did they go to Jared? Did they go to drive line? That's what you're looking for. And he's one of those guys, he's been working on that just physical build body mass, which would generate more power. And that's what we're absolutely want to see out of him. The profile is still a little bit like really low barrel rate. That's usually to more contact based hitters, not a great hard hit rate. He actually went down year over year, but the reason to get excited is he gets the ball in the air, and we have seen a ton of hitters be able to just maximize. CJ Abrams, Hassan Kim, they've been players that, they don't have like great barrel and hard hit, but if you get the ball, you square up the ball and you get it in the air. Mookie Betts has done that for a decent amount of time. Then all of a sudden you can just start, getting 15, 20 homers. Winn can also steal. And that's the thing I think could take a big jump up as well, is this team is completely retransforming who they are. I will say as well, his actual like hitting profile, 80 to 86 rise in his zone contact percentage. So now you're getting into elite zone contact. He's generating more of that body mass, which I am hopeful is going to put some more power up. I think most people see him as like a 15-15 guy. I think there's 20-20 upside, especially if he gets a hit higher in the lineup as they're just getting rid of all their pieces. Masyn Winn and Jurickson Profar were the two guys that jumped out to me as like prime candidates. 175 consensus ADP right now is crazy. He is like my number 1 middle infield target across the board. Pair him with a Corey Seager or a volatile, like if you call Ellie volatile, pair him with whoever you want. You're getting a little bit of everything. And I think there is upside for Masyn Winn. And I do think he could be one of those guys that his profile as a hitter jumps up this year.
Next guy might be a little bit of a leap of faith at 184. Isaac Paredes now with Houston. And I'm here for it. He is 1 year removed from a 31 home run season where he had 250. Last year, just 238. The home runs dropped to 19, the lowest total in the 2 previous years for sure. And I know, you dig deeper and some of the deeper numbers aren't good. I keep coming back to the same thing, which is certain organizations I always perk up, right? When Atlanta goes after somebody, when the Tampa Bay Rays sign a pitcher that's kind of, cast aside from somewhere else, they see something, and Houston's one of these teams too. So they have a really good eye for what they look for. And I think their scouting department's very good at identifying players that are going to play well in this environment. And Paredes does. Now, we're still waiting to hear on Bregman as of recording this and seeing how all that shakes out. But in the meantime, right now, Paredes looks like a guy that if you take those numbers and you copy and paste them to Houston last year, that home run total is not nearly as underwhelming. So I look at this guy as a value at the corner spot. Again, not a guy I want to start as a third baseman, but as a corner guy, I'm very intrigued by him in this situation with Houston. What do you think of Paredes in 2025?
Well, check this out. Baseball Savant has a category you can check where you can see if this player played all their home games in a home ballpark, what would the actual home run total be? That's misleading a little bit, but it tells you about the ballpark. He hit 19 homers last year. If he were in Houston represented the number one most homers he would have hit in a single place, 26 for Houston. No other ballpark would have been more beneficial for Isaac Paredes. So I think the reason you throw him in here, there's a lot of things that are not great about profile. But remember what I just said about Masyn Winn? It's like, he doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't really barrel up the ball. Sometimes it's more of a contact approach. How can you maximize it? Pull fly balls. And that's what Paredes does. He has one of the highest launch angles, 22-degree launch angle. And the way we get to extrapolate this is just look at what he did in Tampa Bay, where he was able to pull those fly balls and had a little bit of gimme. In 2023, he hit 250 with 31 homers with a not great profile. He went to the Cubs. He stunk. Now he's going to the best place that's built for him. We have a baseline for what that would do. And that baseline is 30 homers in the 250 range. You hope that continues. He's got tons of support around him. Listen, this is about undervalued guys. If we get 90% of what he was in Tampa Bay, mind you, this is a better ballpark for him with incredibly better offensive pieces around him. Exactly. Then there's no doubt that him going around 184 right now and his overall ADP, he is not the most undervalued, but he is close to it if that ballpark really does push.
Before we get to the last guy on our list, all these guys you should be putting on your cheat sheets and make your own. Cheat Sheet Creator is available for you to enhance your fantasy baseball draft strategy right now. You can seamlessly integrate and merge rankings from multiple experts from a comprehensive cheat sheet. You can organize players into tiers and add personalized notes to streamline your decision-making process during the draft and automatically update your cheat sheet with the latest expert consensus rankings at FantasyPros to reflect the most current information. You can prepare with precision and confidence using the Cheat Sheet Creator only at fantasypros.com/cheat sheet. So go do it now. Fantasy baseball draft season is here. And of course, don't forget to download the Draft Wizard app today for MLB. Last guy on the list is a guy I actually drafted yesterday, Jeremy Peña of the Houston Astros. It's funny because the NFBC number for him is like 165. I looked at it before, 190 in some other spots there, depending on what you believe. And our expert consensus rankings right now have him at 278, which is just absurd.
It's because there's one site that doesn't have him registered or we're not picking up. So yeah, I put this note in here. The ADP is 278. It's incorrect. If you just take
let's call it 200. Let's split the difference. Let's call it 200. You know what? Let's call it 190. I'll even go there. Let's call it 190. Yep. Still absurd, still ridiculous, still a value coming off a season last year where and this is a player that honestly you were in on before anybody else a couple years ago. So I want to give you credit for that. I hate giving you credit, but I have to.
Agree.
Because you were like the OG Jeremy Peña guy. 22 home runs in 2022. Then the home runs ticked down a little bit to 10. Came back up to 15 last year. He also had 20 steals, established a good baseline of 266. He's just solid. He's going to probably score 80 runs again. And I'm looking at him and saying, well, that late, if I'm looking for a middle infield guy, he fits the bill of exactly the kind of player I want. Strong benchmark, room for more, and I know he's not going to hurt me necessarily either.
Well, listen, also, they lost Kyle Tucker and a theoretical Alex Bregman. So that changed. I mean, obviously, they brought in, Paredes and Christian Walker and whatever, but like it opens up potential in the lineup. If you remember, they were toying around a lot with Jeremy Peña hitting in the leadoff spot. They wanted to see him as a leadoff hitter because you were starting to see, and last year, by the way, I wanted to look here at they took him out of that. His primary spots were at 5 and 6, but he was hitting out of the 1 and 2 spot. that could come back up. And the reason behind that and why they had put them there before is he does make a lot of contact. This is another one of those guys, 87% zone contact. So if the ball is in the zone, he's making quality contact while his strikeouts have gone down. 17% strikeout rate last year, while some of the hitting profile was starting to increase just a tiny bit. But really, I think the key is like he is becoming a better hitter. He is still stealing bases, which is something I wasn't sure if he was going to do. He has increased his stolen bases for 3 straight years. 15, 20, 266 batting average this past season. Now he could be put in a few more prime spots. His expected batting average is 260. What I'm getting at is if you can get 1525 or 2020 and he has a high batting average, that could be worth exponentially more than a 190 ADP, a 200 ADP, a 160 ADP, a position that can fall off a little bit outside the top 15. Jeremy Peña is one of my prime targets for middle infield, or if I really, really screwed up. I think the baseline of what he does makes a ton of sense, and he is very undervalued because of no huge big breakout, but I really do like Jeremy Peña. Yeah. And you know, Luis Garcia, talk about Luis Garcia and everyone's excited. The marker between Luis Garcia and Jeremy Peña, statistically, it's not that far off, but ADP is.
ADP is, and he's a little older too, so maybe you will see a jump. He's 27 years old, right? Turning 28. Like you're in that spot where if he is going to make a jump and become something else or build off of what he's been, this would be the window of time typically where you're going to see that a couple years into the league. So we'll see if Jeremy Peña is ready for a jump. Again, the undervalued guys on our list: Triston Casas, Jr. Caminero, Randy Arozarena, Luis García Jr., Logan O'Hoppe, Paul Goldschmidt, Jurickson Profar, Masyn Winn, Isaac Paredes, and Jeremy Peña. Who is your most underrated player coming into 2025? I want to know. Drop the comments below on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the bell till it goes ding on the YouTube channel, and enjoy all the amazing fantasy baseball content here at FantasyPros MLB. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.